Chapter 8. A Crisis. Saturday the 15th of July, 1995. Walthamstow, East London, and Soho, Central London. "I'm going out now, Ian," Emma called. Then she added carefully, "Are you sure that you don't want to come with me, darling? Dexter will be pleased to see you if you do come." "No, I can't come tonight," Ian replied, entering the room. "I've got things to do tonight, don't you remember? I'm performing at the House of Ha Ha. You go on your own. I'll be fine." This was the right answer, Emma thought. She was quite glad that she was going to see Dexter alone. She wanted to talk to him about her relationship with Ian Whitehead. Emma was beginning to understand that she had made a bad mistake about Ian. They were living together now in a flat in Walthamstow. They had bought the flat together, and that was the mistake. Ian loved her very much, Emma knew this, and she had told herself often that she really loved him too, and that she wanted to spend her life with him. But she now knew that it wasn't true. She was no longer happy with Ian. She just didn't love him. She knew that Ian hated the success of her career and that he hated the failure of his own career. He still wanted desperately to be a stand-up comedian, but he only ever performed at pubs and small comedy clubs. Ian just wasn't very good at stand-up, and he didn't earn much money from it. Emma was feeling trapped. So she needed Dexter to understand. She hoped it was going to be possible to talk sensibly to him tonight. She was feeling a little nervous about that. Perhaps talking about Ian wasn't going to be easy. In the past, it had been easy to talk to Dexter, but now he had changed. He drank far too much, and he was more careless than ever about people's feelings. Ian wasn't Emma's only problem, of course. She was no longer enjoying her job much either. She was a good teacher, she knew that, but she got tired and she didn't have much time to write. She still wanted to be a writer, but when she did write, the results were never very good. That was as bad a problem as her relationship with Ian. But the greatest problem for Emma was that she knew in her heart that Dexter Mayhew was the person she really loved. So there it was. Everything was a bit hopeless. Ian's career wasn't what he'd hoped for, and her career wasn't what she'd hoped for. She had a feeling that Dexter's career wasn't quite what he'd hoped for either. Suki Meadows was his girlfriend these days. But she was now clearly the star presenter of Late at Night. Dex was definitely the number 2 person. He wasn't very popular with the audience, and nasty people often wrote cruel things about him in the newspapers now. Emma and Dexter were meeting for dinner at an expensive restaurant in Soho. It was the kind of place where fashionable people ate. People in television, like Dexter and Suki Meadows. Emma hoped she was going to like it. Dexter was waiting for Emma outside the restaurant. He was talking on his mobile phone. Emma heard his caller's voice quite clearly as she arrived. 10 million viewers this week, Dex, the voice said very loudly. 10 million! Suki, let me explain something about telephones, Dex replied into the phone. You don't need to shout into them. The phone does the shouting for you. I have to go now, he added when he saw Emma. I'll see you soon. Dex, those things are so stupid, Emma said, pointing at Dexter's phone. Why don't you throw it away? You'll have one in less than 6 months, Dexter replied, kissing her. You'll see, I'm right. They went inside the restaurant and sat at the bar where Dexter bought drinks. After a few minutes, they heard a soft female voice behind them. Do you want cigarettes, sir? The voice said. They turned to see a very tall, extraordinarily beautiful girl. The girl was dressed only in black underwear and stockings, and she carried a tray containing the cigarettes. She had a fixed smile. It wasn't a happy smile. Dexter bought some cigarettes. He spent a long time finding his money so that he could look at the girl's body. Then the girl moved away. Why is she dressed like that, Dexter? Emma said. I don't know, Em, Dexter replied. Perhaps all her ugly clothes are in the laundry. You could look like that if you wanted, he added. You've got a great body. But I don't want to look like that, said Emma. Soon a waiter took them to their table. They ordered drinks, and when those arrived, they ordered food. Dexter was drinking quickly. And soon he'll be drunk again, Emma told herself. And she couldn't stop thinking about the cigarette girl. Why am I eating in the kind of restaurant where girls have to dress like that? She asked herself. Then she asked Dexter the same question. This place is terrible, Dex, Emma said. Haven't women made any progress in the last 100 years? You don't understand, Em, Dexter said. Dressing like that gives her power over men. She enjoys it. Don't be stupid, Dexter, Emma said. The owner of this place makes her wear those clothes. If she doesn't wear them, she'll lose her job. She only works here because she needs the money. You can see that. She has no power over anyone. Well, you're still the same old Emma, aren't you? Dexter said crossly. Emma, the angry socialist feminist. I thought that you'd mellowed, but clearly I was wrong about that. You never want to compromise, do you? After that, the evening got worse and worse. Dexter frequently left the table to visit the toilet. Each time he stopped to talk to the cigarette girl. The last time it happened, Emma saw him push a piece of paper into her stocking. Emma had no doubt that he was giving the girl his phone number. When he returned to the table, Emma decided she had had enough of his behaviour. She pushed the table away from her, spilling their drinks, and ran up the stairs out of the restaurant. She could hear Dexter behind her, calling her name. She didn't turn round. In the street, Dexter finally caught up with her. Emma, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you, he said desperately. Suddenly, Emma turned to face him. Dexter, whenever I see you now, you're drunk, she said. I haven't seen you sober for 3 years. I don't know you any longer. You're obnoxious these days. You were always a bit obnoxious, but now you're totally obnoxious. I'm just having fun, Emma, Dexter replied. Well, it isn't fun for me, Emma replied. Let's stop this now, Dexter. You don't care about me. We don't have to meet anymore. Emma, of course we have to meet, Dexter said desperately. We're Dex and Em, aren't we? We'll always be Dex and Em. For a moment he was quiet. He was thinking of the day of his mother's funeral. He was thinking of Emma's kindness to him that day. She had held him as he cried uncontrollably. He had always taken her for granted. He knew that. "Why am I throwing all this away?" he was asking himself. But he knew that he couldn't stop himself. "Dexter," Emma said sadly, "I love you very much, and I probably always will love you. But I'm afraid I don't like you any longer. I don't like the person that you've become. I don't want to hear from you again. Please don't try to contact me." She left him standing in the street and walked away. Part 3. Their Early 30s. Chapter 9. Things End. Monday, the 15th of July, 1996. Leytonstone and Walthamstow, East London. At 6 o'clock on the last day of term at Cromwell Road Comprehensive School, almost everyone had gone home. Only Emma Morley and Mr. Godalming, the school's head teacher, were still in the building. They were lying on the floor of Mr. Godalming's office. "I'll miss you very much during the holidays, Emma," Mr. Godalming said as they put on their clothes. "I'll miss our Friday afternoons together." "No, you won't, Phil. You'll have Mrs. Godalming," Emma replied unkindly. "You'll be fine." Emma wondered as she spoke why she always felt so cross after their meetings in the head teacher's office. Afterwards, she always felt unhappy, and that made her cross. They collected their coats and books, and the head teacher locked the office. As they walked to the school car park, Emma was thinking hard. She had been Phil Godalming's lover for 9 months now, and she was starting to worry about this. She was afraid that he was going to tell his wife about their relationship and ask for a divorce. That was not what Emma wanted at all. She didn't love Phil. She had never really loved him. For a short time he had made her feel better when her life had become very sad. She wasn't seeing Dexter any longer, and she missed him. And her relationship with Ian Whitehead had gone wrong. Phil had helped her to be confident during the bad times, but she certainly didn't want to marry him, and she thought now that it was time for this relationship to end. As Mr. Godalming opened the door of his car, Emma held his arm. "Phil, I'm sorry, but I don't want to be your lover any longer," she said. "I feel bad about our relationship. I feel bad about your wife. I'm not happy." "You were very happy 10 minutes ago, Emma," the head teacher said. He laughed. "No, Phil, you were very happy 10 minutes ago," Emma replied sadly. Phil Godalming wasn't pleased to hear Emma's words. He'd enjoyed their after-school meetings on Fridays. He argued for some time, but clearly Emma wasn't going to change her mind. "We'll talk about this next term," he said. He got into his car, closed the door, and drove quickly out of the car park. Emma travelled sadly home to Walthamstow on the Underground. On her way home, she bought some wine to drink later. She was going to spend the evening on her own. Ian Whitehead no longer lived with her. They had ended their relationship after a terrible argument. They had argued about Ian's jealousy and his selfishness. At the end of their argument, they had both cried. They had cried for each other and for the end of their relationship. But they both knew that it had to end. It had all been so sad, Emma thought now, as she sat in the train. Late that evening, after she had drunk the wine, Emma turned on her television. The first person she saw was Dexter Mayhew. Suddenly, Emma realized that it was exactly a year since she had spoken to him. She knew that Dexter's TV career hadn't been very successful recently. Viewers had never really loved him, it seemed. They had only loved to hate him. And nowadays, most of them just hated him. Dexter was now presenting a very late-night TV show about computer games. Few people watched it. Emma did watch the show for a few minutes. She thought that Dexter wasn't looking well. His face was looking tired, and he no longer seemed confident. Suddenly, Emma had a great feeling of friendship and love for him. She realized that for the last 8 years she had thought about Dexter every day. Now she knew that she wanted his friendship again. She wanted him to be her best friend again. "I'll call him tomorrow," she told herself. "I really will call him." Chapter 10. Resignation. Tuesday, the 15th of July, 1997. Central London. The River Thames looked lovely on this warm, sunny afternoon, Emma Morley thought. It was a work day, but Emma wasn't at school. Teaching had finished for the term, but there was a very important staff meeting happening at the school. Emma was needed there, but she didn't really care about that. She had phoned the head teacher's secretary that morning and told her that she was ill and had to stay in bed. The woman clearly hadn't believed her. Emma didn't care about that either. Emma wasn't really ill at all. In fact, she was feeling good, and she had been to a meeting with a publisher. At last, Emma was feeling confident about something she had written, a novel for young readers. It was about a group of children at an East London school. The children were appearing in a school production of Oliver, and the story was told by one of the actors, a girl called Julie Criscoll. Julie was a rude, angry teenage girl with a good heart. The book was funny and touching. Emma had included silly drawings and handwritten pages in her text, so parts of it looked like a schoolgirl's diary. She knew that what she had written was really good, and now other people thought it was good too. Perhaps soon she was going to be a published author. Emma wanted to write, and she wanted even more to stop teaching. She thought every day about resigning. Her job at the school had been very difficult for the last year. Phil Godalming had been angry because she no longer wanted to sleep with him. He'd tried to make her life difficult all year. And now she knew that she could write well. Emma wanted to spend her life writing. At her meeting this morning, she had told the publisher about her ambitions. The publisher had been helpful. Emma's life was going to change. As she walked by the river, her mobile phone rang. Emma did now have a mobile. Dexter had been right after all. Phil had given it to her during the months when they'd been close. "I want to be able to hear your voice at any time," he'd told her. As she took the phone from her handbag, Emma guessed that it was Phil phoning her now. She wasn't wrong. "So you're ill in bed, are you?" he said in his special, loud, angry head teacher's voice. Well, I don't believe it. I think you're outside enjoying the sunshine. I can hear the traffic noise. Don't shout at me, Phil, Emma said quietly. My name's Mr. Godalming, not Phil, the man replied. This is serious, you know that. I told you that today's meeting was a very important one. There'll be trouble about this, Emma. And if you don't want a relationship with me, I won't protect you from trouble. Your job is in danger. No, it isn't, Emma replied, laughing. I'm resigning from my job now. Do you understand? I've resigned. Goodbye, Mr. Godalming. She switched off her phone, and for a moment she thought about throwing it into the river. But after a few seconds, she put it back in her bag. Chapter 11. Dexter in Love. Wednesday, the 15th of July, 1998. Chichester, Sussex. Dexter Mayhew was lying in bed with Sylvie Cope at the end of a difficult day. Recently, something strange had happened to Dexter. He had fallen in love. He'd had many lovers, but he'd never been in love before. And now the girl beside him was more important to him than anything in the world. He almost couldn't believe his luck. Sylvie was tall, slim and beautiful, with long, straight hair and a heart-shaped face. She and Dexter had known each other for several months, and they spent lots of time together. Every weekend they flew to a different European city, and they always had a wonderful time. They spent lots of Dexter's money in expensive shops. Sylvie was excited to know Dexter in real life after seeing him on television. But the truth was that Dexter liked Sylvie much more than she liked him. But Dexter actually enjoyed this. It meant that Sylvie was different from his other girlfriends. Sylvie worked in marketing. Dexter had met many of her friends who also worked in marketing. He hadn't liked them, and they hadn't liked him. Who cared? And tonight, Dexter and Sylvie were staying at the home of her parents in Chichester. Today, Dexter had met the Cope family for the first time. Dexter hadn't enjoyed meeting the Copes much. Sylvie's parents clearly didn't admire unimportant television presenters, and Sylvie's twin younger brothers had mocked him openly. But Dexter really didn't care about that. Sylvie was on his side, and that was the only important thing. Sylvie was on his side, and now she was by his side in the big bed. I love you, Dexter said to her quietly. He'd never said these simple words to anyone before. You're amazing, he added, but Sylvie was already asleep. As Dexter lay awake, he realized that he wanted to tell someone else about Sylvie and about his good luck. He wanted to tell someone he liked and trusted. And suddenly he knew who he wanted to tell. It was someone he hadn't spoken to for 3 years. He wanted to tell Emma Morley. Chapter 12. Weddings. Thursday, the 15th of July, 1999. Somerset, England. It seemed to Emma Morley that all her friends were getting married this year. As she drove to Somerset, in the west of England, on the morning of the 15th of July, She thought of the weddings she had been to recently. Some of her friends from university had married for the first time that year. Some of them had married for the second time. Watching these wedding ceremonies had made Emma feel that she was growing old. All the university friends she met at them asked her if she had a boyfriend, and they all pretended to be sad for her when she said she hadn't. But they all said she was looking better than she had ever looked. They were right. She took better care of herself these days, and she even wore pretty clothes for these occasions. The best thing about these weddings for Emma was that she had met Dexter Mayhew at several of them. At last they were speaking to each other again, after more than 3 years of silence. That was very, very good. Of course she had met Dexter's girlfriend Sylvie too, and perhaps that was less good. But Dexter was clearly in love with the girl, so Emma tried to be happy for him. She had never seen Dexter really in love before. This morning Emma was driving to Somerset for the marriage of Tilly Killick. Tilly was getting married at a posh hotel in the countryside. Dexter had known Tilly during their university days too, so he was going to be there, and Emma was looking forward to seeing him again. She was driving an old car. It was the first car she had ever owned, and it was the best she was able to afford. Emma certainly wasn't a rich woman. In fact, she was now living on a small advance from a publisher and was writing her second book about Julie Criscall. But the first book was going to be published soon, and the publisher expected it to sell very well. Emma had some problems with her car during the journey, and she was a bit late when she arrived at the hotel. The ceremony had already begun when she entered the big marriage room, so she found a seat at the back of the room. As she was sitting down, Dexter Mayhew turned round and saw her. He smiled and waved his hand. Dexter was sitting at the front with Sylvie. He hadn't really been listening to the ceremony. He had been counting the number of women in the room he had slept with. "It's 5, he thought. "It's 5 in one room, including the bride. It's a good score. Is it a record? Do I get an extra point for the bride? And really, it's 5.5 if I count that night with Emma." And as he thought this, he realized that it was a bad thing to think. He also realized that he wanted to talk to Emma very much. "I'll try to talk to her alone," he thought. "I need to tell her everything." After the ceremony, the party began. Dexter left Sylvie with some friends and started to look for Emma. But the first person he met was Callum O'Neill. The two men hadn't spoken for a long time. Dexter had heard that Callum had sold his computer business for a huge amount of money. He had now started a new business, a successful chain of sandwich shops. Today he was very expensively dressed in beautiful, fashionable clothes. Dexter remembered that at Edinburgh University, Callum had worn the same pair of trousers every day for 3 years. How things had changed. Callum had gone up in the world, and Dexter had come down. "Dexter, old friend, you're still alive," Callum said. "It's been a long time since I've seen you. I stopped phoning you because you never returned my calls." "Didn't I?" Dexter said. "Well, you know, I've been very busy with my television programs." He tried to sound confident. "And are you still on television? I haven't seen you on TV for a long time." Callum said. I'm usually in programs for sophisticated late-night viewers, Dexter said uncomfortably. Perhaps you need a new career opportunity, Callum said. You could work for me, Dex. I need a new manager. Come and see me soon. I'll buy you a good lunch, not sandwiches. We'll talk about it. Now, let's go and find your lovely girlfriend. I saw you with her earlier and I want to meet her. Have you seen my girlfriend? I won't ask you to meet her. I'm getting rid of her soon. Much later in the afternoon, Dexter finally met up with Emma. Let's go somewhere quiet, he said. I want to talk to you. Where's somewhere quiet? Emma asked him. Well, there's a maze here, I believe, said Dexter. It's a large one. It would be nice to get lost in it. They found the entrance to the maze and they walked inside. They didn't stop until they reached the centre. Then they turned to face each other. Well, isn't it strange? Emma began. These days we only talk at other people's weddings. I'm sorry that I've been so obnoxious during these last few years, Dexter said quietly. I don't blame you for ending our friendship, but I want us to be friends again now. I'm sorry too, Dex, Emma replied. Perhaps I didn't understand how badly your mother's death had hurt you. I didn't wait for you to start feeling better. We were both to blame. I'm a different person now, Em, Dexter said. Sylvie has changed me. I love her very much. He stopped speaking for a moment. Emma, there's going to be another wedding soon, he went on. Sylvie and I are going to get married later this year, and Sylvie is going to have a baby. For another moment they didn't speak, but their faces showed their real feelings. Then Emma knew that she had to say something to hide her feelings at least. She's a lovely girl, Dex, Emma said. It's marvellous news. I think that fatherhood will transform my life, Dexter replied. I've almost stopped drinking already. I'll be a good family man. Well, that's good, said Emma. She laughed. Of course, you've just ruined any chance of future happiness for me, but it's all great news. She stopped for a moment. Don't worry, she added. I'm only joking. And then they both laughed. The wedding will be in September, said Dexter. Emma, will you help me write my speech for the big day? No, Dexter, said Emma. Don't be an idiot. Just look into your heart and write. Then they walked back towards the entrance of the maze. Chapter 13. The Pleasures of Fatherhood. Saturday, the 15th of July, 2000. Richmond, Surrey, England. Jasmine, Alison, Viola Mayhew, Dexter and Sylvie's daughter, had been born on the 3rd day of the year. She was always going to be the same age as the century. Dexter loved her dearly. He wanted to do everything that was best for her. After work on the 15th of July, he was hurrying home to the pretty house in Richmond where he and his wife and daughter lived. Richmond was 10 miles west of London, so Dexter was no longer a Londoner. His flat in Belsize Park was rented to someone else. Dexter really had almost given up alcohol. That was something he was proud of. He often felt pressure to have just a small drink, but he rarely gave in to it. He had given in to pressure about something else. The pressure had come from Sylvie, who wanted him to find a real job. He had been getting very little TV work in the last year, so finally he agreed to have a meeting with Callum. Sylvie really liked Callum, and Callum wanted to help them. Callum had given Dexter a job. One day it might become a very good job, but at the moment Dexter wasn't enjoying it. The problem was that Dexter had to start at the bottom, as Callum said. He had to make sandwiches. He had to sell sandwiches in the shops. He had to drive a van around London. It was very menial work. The worst thing about it was that he was frequently recognized by people. Customers in the shops often asked him why he was no longer on TV, and that hurt him. He also worried that Sylvie was disappointed in him. She had pressured him about the job, but he felt she was angry that his TV career had ended. He worried that she was no longer very interested in him. They often argued these days, and they hadn't made love for weeks. Dexter was thinking about all this as he arrived home, but tonight he was going to prove to Sylvie that he was a new person. Tonight he was going to look after Jasmine alone while Sylvie went out with friends. It was going to be the first time Sylvie had left the baby for more than a few minutes. "I'm going out for a meal in central London with some of my girlfriends," Sylvie had told him. "Then we'll stay at a hotel overnight. I'll be back the next morning. It will be all right, you'll see." Yes, it will be all right, Dexter told himself now. Sylvie looked tired and unhappy when Dexter entered the house. "What's wrong, darling?" he asked her. "Oh, it's just been a bad day," she replied. "Jasmine hasn't slept at all. She's been crying all day. And life in the house gets very boring when you aren't here. I'll feel better when I get out of the house tonight. Now, are you sure you'll be all right on your own with Jasmine?" She tried to sound friendly, but Dexter knew that she didn't really trust him. "She thinks I'll start drinking," he told himself. "But I will not. I will certainly not." "We'll be fine," he said. "Don't worry about us." "If there's a problem, call me," Sylvie said. "But call my mobile, not the hotel number. Do you understand?" From the beginning, Dexter's evening was a disaster. Moments after Sylvie left the house, Jasmine started to scream, and she didn't stop. She missed her mother. She didn't let Dexter feed her. Soon there was baby food all over her clothes, and she was wet through. Dexter changed her clothes and laid her down, but she refused to go to sleep. Then she screamed when Dexter turned on the television and saw the face of Suki Meadows. Jasmine's scream was even louder than Suki's voice. Soon Dexter was desperate, and soon he was walking to the wine shop in the next street with Jasmine in his arms. When he returned home, Dexter opened one of the bottles of wine he had bought. As he drank, Jasmine finally went to sleep. Dexter began to feel calmer, but he didn't stop drinking. He looked at the baby food, the baby clothes, and the baby toys that were all around him. He felt trapped. He drank some more wine. "I need to talk to someone," he told himself. He tried to phone Emma Morley, but she didn't answer her phone. He waited for a few minutes and tried again. Still she didn't answer. Much later, and feeling desperate, he called Suki Meadows. "Hi, Suki. It's me, Dex," he said. "I saw you on TV earlier. You were great."
Dex! Hey there! Well, how about all this? I haven't heard from you for a long time, Suki shouted. Suddenly, she spoke quietly. In fact, it's been 5 years since we spoke.
"Where are you, Suki?" Dexter asked her. "I'd love to see you. There's so much to talk about. I want us to be friends again. Will you come to my house? Get a taxi, I'll pay for it."
I'm at a party with some friends, Suki said, still speaking quietly. I'm not free. When we were together, you treated me really badly. Do you remember that? You can't just phone me after 5 years and tell me to come to you.
At that moment, Jasmine woke up and started crying again.
What was that noise?
Suki asked. "It's a baby. It's my daughter, Jasmine," Dexter said nervously. "Didn't you know I had a daughter? I married someone and—" Suki said several very rude words and then ended the call suddenly. Dexter opened the other bottle. Just before midnight, Sylvie used her mobile phone to call Dexter. She was sitting naked on the bed in her hotel room. They spoke for a few minutes, then Sylvie ended the conversation and began to cry. "He was drunk," she said to Callum O'Neill, who was sitting beside her. "I knew he was going to be drunk." "Well, I've given him a job. There's nothing else I can do about him," Callum said. "The question is, what are you going to do about him? And when are you going to do it?" He turned on the television angrily and got into bed. Chapter 14. Another Man. Sunday, the 15th of July, 2001. Paris, France. Emma was waiting at the Eurostar station in Paris. She was waiting for Dexter to arrive on a train from London. She was a bit nervous. They had only seen each other once since his marriage to Sylvie had broken up. On that occasion, they had spent the night together. That night, she had finally slept with him for the first and only time. She thought now that it had probably been a bad idea, but he had been desperately unhappy, and she had wanted to help him in some way. They'd both been a bit drunk. Soon after, Emma had decided to get away from England for a few months. She had come to Paris for the spring and summer. She wanted to spend her time writing. Her Julie Criscall books were a great success, and her publisher wanted more. Now Dexter was coming to visit her for a few days, and she hoped that they could both forget about that night and be good friends again. But she had something to tell Dexter, and she was worried. The train arrived, and a few moments later, Emma saw Dexter walking towards her. He was carrying a book. He looked terrible. He'd lost weight, and his clothes were untidy and too big for him. He looked desperately tired. The end of his marriage to Sylvie had hurt Dexter a lot. Their divorce was going to be made final soon. Sylvie and Jasmine had now gone to live with Callum O'Neill. That had made it worse for Dexter, of course. "You didn't have to meet me," Dexter said.
"Of course I had to meet you," she said, smiling. "You're a tourist."
The two friends left the station and went to a cafe near the river. They sat down at a table outside it, and Emma ordered coffee for them. Dexter put the book he had been carrying on the table. It was a copy of Big Julie Criscall Against the Whole World. It's great, Em, Dexter said. I read it on the train. I really enjoyed it. It's the first novel I've finished in years. There were hundreds of copies in the bookshop at the station in London. I'm really proud of you.
Well, thanks for that, but it's really a book for 11 to 14-year-olds, Emma said. She laughed, but she was touched. The publisher wants 2 more Julie Criscoll books, and there's going to be a TV show based on them too, she went on. I'm going to be... She stopped when she saw Dexter's face and started to talk about something else. They drank their coffee and then they walked through the busy streets to Emma's flat. As they walked, Dexter told Emma that he missed his daughter desperately. He saw her only once a fortnight, when Sylvie brought her to visit him. Emma's flat was on the 5th floor of an old building. They climbed the stairs and Emma opened the door. The flat was light and pleasant. Emma went to the kitchen and Dexter looked into the other rooms. There was only one bed in the flat. A big one. Dexter saw the bed, sighed deeply. Then he hurried to the kitchen and put his arms round Emma. He started to kiss her wildly, but after a moment she pushed him gently away. Dex, I have to tell you something, Emma said. I've got a friend here in Paris. His name's Jean-Pierre. I like him very much.
Suddenly Dexter understood. You're seeing another man, he said. A Frenchman. Oh, right. But where am I going to sleep? I need to find a hotel, don't I? Or shall I just go back to London this evening?
You can sleep here, Dex. I'll sleep at Jean-Pierre's flat, Emma said.
Dexter just looked at her.
Oh, Dexter, what did you think was going to happen?
Well, we're lovers, aren't we? I hope that you and I... He stopped. Oh, Emma, you can't...
Dexter, you're jealous, Emma said, laughing. I can't believe it. This is so strange. We were lovers for one night. One night in 13 years. Think of all the girlfriends you've brought to see me. You always told me who you were sleeping with. You didn't expect me to be jealous of them. And now... But she couldn't go on. She saw the pain and the hopelessness in his eyes. She put her arms round him and kissed him gently. Oh, Dexter, she said quietly, I thought that I'd got rid of you. I thought that you weren't going to be my problem anymore. All right, all right. I'll phone Jean-Pierre and tell him that I'm ill. But Dexter, if you ever treat me badly and go off with other people, I'll kill you. Do you understand?
Part 4. Their late 30s. Chapter 15. Monday morning. Monday the 15th of July, 2002. Belsize Park, London. At 7 o'clock in the morning, Dexter Mayhew and Emma Morley were lying awake in bed. They were thinking their own thoughts. They were now living together most of the time. Emma still kept her own flat, but at last they were close friends and lovers as well, and really life was good for them both. Emma's thoughts that morning were about the 15th of July the previous year. She thought about that and about what had happened since then. Dexter's visit to Paris had been difficult at the start, but she had quickly realized that she hadn't really moved on from him and that probably she wasn't able to move on from him. So she'd finished her relationship with her French boyfriend. Dexter had stayed with her in Paris for the whole summer, and they'd returned to London as a couple. These days, Emma usually slept in Dexter's flat in Belsize Park, and during the daytimes she went to her own flat 2 miles away. She rode there on her bicycle and wrote her books there. Emma's series of books about Julie Criscoll was selling very well. The television version of them was popular too, so Emma was almost rich now. During the daytimes, Dexter now ran a successful delicatessen and cafe in Highgate, another fashionable part of North London. Emma knew that he had hated doing menial jobs when he worked for Callum O'Neill, but now he seemed to enjoy doing the same jobs for himself. He enjoyed making the sandwiches and coffee for his customers at the deli. Most of the time, Emma was confident about their future. She loved Dexter, and she loved his daughter Jasmine, who often spent time with them. The three of them were happy together. This was good for Jasmine because Sylvie and Callum were not getting on well together. But there was one little cloud in Emma's sky. She was beginning to wish for a child of her own. And she wasn't getting any younger, of course. Dexter already had a child, and he wasn't so happy with the idea of another one. Sometimes they argued about this. Perhaps I need to find someone else, Emma sometimes thought when this happened. But she never thought very seriously about leaving Dexter. One day, Emma had met Dexter's father again. She remembered that meeting this morning. "Of course I remember you, Emma," Stephen Mayhew had said. "You called me a bourgeois fascist once. I'm very pleased to meet you again." And he'd told her, "Dexter is so much better now that he has you with him. Suddenly I like my own son again. It's wonderful." Now, as Emma stopped remembering things and started to get up, Dexter spoke. "Why do you still keep your own flat, Emma?" he said. "You can live here all the time, you know that." "Dexter, are you asking me to be your flatmate?" Emma replied, pretending to be surprised. "It's taken you a lot of years, hasn't it?" "Yes, I think I am," Dexter said. "And yes, it has. But that's what I want." "The flat's really too small, Dex," Emma said after a few moments. "Well, let's buy a house together, Em," Dexter said. Chapter 16. Big Day Speech. Doc. Tuesday, the 15th of July, 2003. Yorkshire, England. "That's the place where I was bitten by a dog when I was a little girl," Emma said. She pointed ahead. She and Dexter were walking along a beach on the Yorkshire coast. The morning was hot, but there weren't many people on the beach. The school holidays hadn't begun yet. "What kind of dog was it?" Dexter asked. He was trying too hard to sound interested. Emma looked carefully at him. Clearly, he didn't really want to know what kind of dog had bitten her. "Am I boring you, Dexter?" she asked. She sounded a bit cross. "No, of course you aren't," Dexter replied wearily. "Well, perhaps you are boring me a little bit." "Ah, then you have 4 more days of boredom to look forward to, don't you?" Emma said. She laughed. She liked his sudden honesty. "Poor Dexter," she added. Emma and Dexter were on holiday. They had rented a small cottage in the Yorkshire countryside for a week. Each day they set out to visit places that Emma remembered from when she was a child. Today, after their morning at the beach, they were going to drive inland. Emma wanted to find a waterfall she remembered from her childhood. "It's a beautiful place, Dex," she said. "You'll love it." But that afternoon they didn't succeed in their search. Emma's memory wasn't good enough. After an hour they hadn't found Emma's waterfall. So they found a pleasant spot in the sun and lay down on the grass. Soon Dexter was feeling a bit sleepy.
"Look at that bird up there, Dex,"
Emma said suddenly, pointing to the sky.
"What kind of bird is it? It's beautiful."
Dexter did not look up. "I'm too young to be a bird watcher," he said. "Bird watching is for middle-aged people. And isn't bird watching a very bourgeois thing to do? Next, you'll want us to move to the country. Then you'll want us to cuddle in bed and call each other darling and go to the shops together." For a moment, Emma thought about Ian Whitehead. Calling him darling hadn't meant that she'd really loved him, had it? "After that, it's classical music, Beethoven and that kind of thing," Dexter went on. "I've seen it happen to people, Em. It's awful." Emma laughed and kissed him. "It does sound awful. Tell me again, why are we going to get married?" she said. "Well, we don't need to. We could cancel the wedding," Dexter said. "Yes, but we've paid for it now," Emma said. "Can we get our money back if we cancel it?" "I don't think so," Dexter replied. "Ah, well, we'd better get married then," said Emma. "I knew there was a reason." And she kissed him again. Then she closed her eyes and thought about their wedding. They had chosen a day in November for the ceremony. Only a few close friends were going to be there. And finally, she was going to be Emma Mayhew after all these years. "I'll marry you if you promise you'll never play golf," she whispered. That evening they went to bed early. Emma quickly went to sleep, but Dexter couldn't sleep, so he got up quietly and went downstairs. He was thinking about Emma and about their big day in November. He was going to make a speech at the wedding party. He needed it to be just right. Suddenly he remembered something that Emma had once said to him. He turned on his laptop and opened a file. Then he looked into his heart and made some notes. My wedding speech. 1. I met Emma at university. 2. She called my dad a bourgeois fascist. 3. She can't cook. 4. We argue a lot, but laugh a lot too. 5. She's beautiful, but she doesn't believe it. 6. She gets on well with my lovely daughter, Jasmine. 7. She even gets on well with my ex-wife. Ha ha. Leave 5 seconds for laughter here. 8. Everyone loves her. 9. Our sudden romance lasted 15 years. 10. My wonderful mum loved Emma. Also, 11. Say something nice about Dad and about Emma's parents. 12. Say that it's my second wedding and I need to get it right this time, etc. He was reading what he had written when he heard Emma's footsteps on the stairs. He gave the file a name, Big Day Speech ... and closed it.
"Sorry I fell asleep," Emma said from the bottom of the stairs. "But I'm awake now. What shall we do?"
"I think I'd like to play a board game," said Dexter, and smiled. Chapter 17. Too Late. Thursday, the 15th of July, 2004. Belsize Park, London. It was breakfast time in Belsize Park.
"Well, it didn't happen this month, Dex," Emma said sadly. "I'm sorry."
"Please don't worry about it, Em," Dexter said. "We'll go on trying."
"I'll be 39 next April," Emma replied. "Soon it will be too late."
Dexter now wanted a baby as much as she did, but it wasn't happening. They were both beginning to worry.
"It really doesn't matter," Emma told herself. "We're a happily married couple, that's the important thing. And Jasmine's here a lot."
She told herself this, but there was a hole in her life now. It made her sad, and sometimes it made her cross with Dexter for no real reason. This morning she tried to be calm, but she was quickly upset by something in the newspaper.
"Dex, I don't understand students these days," she said. "They don't care about anything, do they? When I was a student, we protested about things like this."
She put the newspaper down in front of him and pointed at a story. "Perhaps they're right not to protest," said Dexter wearily. "We aren't all socialist, feminist, anti-fascists, are we? Some of us have other things to worry about." And that started the argument. For 10 minutes, they were very rude to each other. Then, quite suddenly, Emma didn't want to argue any longer.
"I'm sorry, Dexter," she said. "This isn't about students, is it? It's about not having a baby. I'm really upset about it. I don't want to fight with you."
By the time they left the house, they were almost friends again. Emma was going to her flat to write. Dexter was going to the deli, but he wasn't in a hurry. He now had help there. A pleasant girl called Maddie worked as his manager, and a few other people helped at busy times. "There's a house that I want us to look at this afternoon," Dexter said as they left the flat. "We really must buy one soon, and I've got a good feeling about this one. I'll phone you with the address later. It's in Kilburn. Meet me at the house at 5 o'clock. So Emma got on her bicycle and rode off to do her day's work. At about lunchtime, Dexter phoned with the address where they were going to meet.
"I'll see you there, darling," Emma said. "I'm sorry about this morning. I love you."
At 4 o'clock, Emma set off from her flat to cycle to Kilburn. It started to rain, and soon the roads were wet. There was lots of traffic noise. Emma didn't hear the car that came out of a side street at high speed, so she was surprised to be flying through the air. She landed by the side of the road. When she opened her eyes, there were people standing round her.
"Are you all right, miss?"
one of them asked. Another was crying. But Emma didn't speak. She knew that she was certainly not all right. Two thoughts passed through her mind as she lay on the ground. One was a memory of herself playing on a Yorkshire beach. She was with her parents, and she was 9 years old. The other thought was about Dexter. She was going to be late for their meeting. He was going to worry, and he was going to get wet. Then Emma Mayhew died, and everything she had ever thought had gone. Part 5. Memories. Chapter 18. 3 Anniversaries. Friday, the 15th of July, 2005. London, England. The months had passed. A year had passed. Very early in the morning of the 15th of July, 2005, Dexter Mayhew was drinking in a club in central London. It was the kind of club that stayed open very late. Dexter was alone. Earlier, he had come to the club with Maddie, his manager, and 2 of the other workers from his deli. Dexter had wanted them all to drink to the memory of Emma at exactly midnight, at the beginning of her anniversary day. They had gladly come with him. But soon after midnight, the others had left the club. They needed to go home. Maddie had tried to make Dexter go home too, but he'd wanted to stay, and Maddie had left. Now Dexter was very drunk. Finally, Dexter left and walked to another club, where he continued drinking. Soon he got into a fight. He knew that he wasn't going to win the fight. He didn't want to win the fight. He wanted to die. The fight ended with Dexter lying unconscious in the street. When he woke, he found that someone had stolen his money and his keys. There was blood all over his clothes. Somehow he found his way back to Belsize Park, but outside his front door he realized that he couldn't get into the flat without his keys. He lay down and went to sleep on the ground. Sylvie found him unconscious there in the morning when she brought Jasmine for a visit. Sylvie had ended her relationship with Callum O'Neill, and Dexter now got on quite well with his ex-wife. When she found Dexter outside his door, she phoned his father. She had her own keys, so she took Dexter into the flat and washed him and found him some clean clothes. Later, Stephen Mayhew arrived and took Dexter back to Oxfordshire. Now that they had both lost their wives, they understood each other better. Dexter's father was gentle with him. Saturday, the 15th of July, 2006, London, England. The months had passed. Another year had passed. For Dexter, the second anniversary of Emma's death wasn't as painful as the first one. When the deli closed for the day, he decided to spend the evening alone. He wanted to look through Emma's books and photographs. He was going to keep some of them. He was going to give some of them to her parents. The others were going to her friends. So in the evening, he sat with Emma's things around him. He thought about the previous anniversary, and he remembered a strange thing. A few days after the 15th of July last year, he'd received a kind letter from Ian Whitehead. "When Emma left me, I hated you," he had written. "I wanted to die. But after a few years, I met someone else and my life changed. And now I'm happy again. We have 3 children. I know how you must feel without Emma, Dexter, and I know that she loved you very, very much. I used to think that you weren't good enough for her, but none of us was good enough for Emma, and we have to go on for her. Please take care of yourself." After that letter, Dexter and Ian had spoken on the phone a few times, but they both knew that they weren't going to meet again. Dexter spent a lot of the evening looking at Emma's old photos. He found some which Emma had taken on Arthur's Seat in Edinburgh. One of them had been taken by someone else and showed both Emma and Dexter. These photos had been taken on the first day they had ever spent together. Suddenly Dexter felt terrible. There were so many memories. He started to cry, but he knew what to do. He phoned his friend Maddie. Talking to her made him calm again. "Shall I come to you?" she said. "I can get a taxi." "No, it's all right. I just wanted to hear a friendly voice," Dexter told her. "I'll be fine now." And soon he felt much better. Sunday the 15th of July, 2007, Edinburgh, Scotland. The months had passed. One more year had passed. On the 3rd anniversary of Emma's death, Dexter was in Edinburgh with Maddie and Jasmine. Dexter and Maddie were a couple now, and they were having a short holiday with Dexter's daughter. This morning, Maddie had told Dexter to take Jasmine for a walk. "I'll go to one of the art galleries," she'd said. She'd guessed that Dexter wanted to visit places from his past. She'd also guessed that he wanted to talk to Jasmine about Emma. Jasmine was 7 years old now, and she walked happily beside Dexter. First, they walked to Rankeillor Street, and for a minute, Dexter looked up at the window of the flat where Emma used to live. Then they walked through the streets towards Arthur's Seat. "Let's do some climbing," said Dexter when they reached the hill. "There's a wonderful view from the top."
"Did Emma come up here too?"
Jasmine asked him when they reached the top. "Yes, we came here together," Dexter replied. "I have a photo of us both on the hill. I'll show you it when we get back to London."
"Do you miss Emma?"
Jasmine asked quietly. "Yes, I miss her every day," Dexter said. "She was my best friend. Do you miss her?"
"I think I miss her,"
Jasmine said.
"but I was only 4 when she died. I don't remember her very well. She was nice, wasn't she?"
"She was very nice," Dexter said.
"Who's your best friend now, Daddy?"
asked Jasmine. "You are, of course," Dexter replied quickly.
"Can we go down now?"
Jasmine said.
"I'm a bit tired."
Chapter 19. The Past. Friday the 15th of July, 1988. Edinburgh, Scotland. "Have you had someone in your room all night?" Tilly Killick asked when Emma Morley entered the kitchen in their flat that morning. "Oh, yes, it's only Dexter Mayhew," Emma replied. She tried to sound uninterested. She was not very successful. "It's only Dexter Mayhew, you lucky person," Tilly said. She sounded a little jealous. "Is he staying here all day, too?" "No, I think we'll go out after breakfast," Emma said. "What shall we do? Have you any ideas for a romantic day, Tilly?" "Well, Arthur's Seat is a good place to go, isn't it?" Tilly said. "You can be romantic there." So after breakfast, Emma and Dexter went out into the city. Emma took her camera with her, and they bought food for a picnic. Dexter was worried about climbing Arthur's seat. He was wearing expensive shoes, and he didn't want to ruin them. "I don't climb mountains, Em," he said. "I'm not that kind of person."
"Dexter, it's only a hill. It's not K2, Emma replied, laughing. So they climbed Arthur's seat, and when they reached the top, they decided that it wasn't really romantic. There were too many people already there for that. But Dexter had never climbed the hill before, and he was surprised. He enjoyed the view. It made an impression on him. This didn't often happen. "I've lived in this city for 4 years," he said. "Now this is my last day in Edinburgh. Why haven't I been up here before?" "Because you're not that kind of person," Emma replied. They ate their picnic, and then they sat quietly together. "Dexter," Emma said after a few minutes, "I want to say something. It's about last night. I haven't done that kind of thing often, and I know that you were a bit drunk. I know it was just one night, and that's it. But I want to say that it was nice for me. It was nice, and you're nice, Dexter. You're a nice person when you allow yourself to be nice. I really like you." Later, on their way back to the bottom of the hill, they stopped to take some photos. Someone took a photo of both of them together. Then Emma walked with Dexter back to his flat. They found Dexter's parents waiting for him there.
"This is my friend, Emma Morley," Dexter told his parents.
"Hello, Emma. I'm Alison," Dexter's mother said. "We're pleased to meet you. Do you want to come for a drink with us?" Emma looked at Dexter. He looked unhappy and worried. She made a quick decision. "No, thank you," she replied. "That's very kind of you, but I have to get back to my flat." Then she spoke to the boy. "Have a nice life, Dexter," she said quickly. She turned and walked away. "I'll probably never see him again," she told herself as she walked sadly along the street. But a few minutes later, as she walked through the city centre, she heard someone call her name behind her. She turned and saw Dexter. He had been running and he was exhausted. "My parents came early," he said. "I didn't have time to get your address and phone number." Quickly, Emma wrote these on a piece of paper, and Dexter wrote his address and phone number for her. "Call me when I get back from France," he said. "Come and stay with us for a few days. I want to see you again." Then he kissed her gently, and she kissed him. They stood in the middle of the busy street, and people on their way home hurried around them. It was the sweetest kiss either of them ever knew. "Goodbye, Dex," Emma said.
"Goodbye."
"Goodbye. Goodbye."